A new biography of this often overlooked figure in American history is being met with critical acclaim. Called wildly entertaining by The New Yorker, revelatory and riveting by Publishers Weekly, and delightfully enthralling by The Wall Street Journal, the book also made Oprah's Best of the Fall list. Joining us now, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian and author of the book, The Revolutionary, Samuel Adams. Stacy Schiff, thank you so much for joining us. And also we have Jonathan Capehart joining the table, Chris Matthews joining the table, Jackie Alemany joining the table from the Washington Post. We appreciate you all being with us. And we can start with this concept, and then we will also talk politics. But first, Stacy, tell us what motivated this book, and what do you think will surprise the reader the most?
Well, it was 2016, and I was thinking, as I think we all were, about the origins of America and the origins of American democracy. And it was a moment that really resonated with the moment in which we were living. And if you look at the other founders, each of them says quite clearly there is one driving force in the cause that predates the revolution, and that is Samuel Adams. He's referred to as the most active, the earliest, the most persevering man of the revolution, and yet he's gone missing. So who was this individual whom history has forgotten, but whom his contemporaries all call essentially the founder of the cause, the person who changes the hearts and the minds of Americans before any shot is fired at Lexington and Concord?
I'll open up the table to questions, but first, what parallels did you find along the way between Adams' day and our political moment right now?
Well, you know, it's a very tumultuous time, so it felt very consonant in that respect. It's a moment where the media is exploding and ideas are exploding alongside the media. One of his greatest contributions is really to figure out how to use the media, how to use propaganda, how to instigate, how to put ideas on the page, how to pull ideas out of the air and make them accessible to everyone. It's also a moment of a feeling that government is unresponsive, a feeling where people are feeling that government does not represent them, does not hear their needs, is deaf to them. And where income inequality, interestingly, plays a role, so that you have almost a sort of a feeling that there's a class conflict in some way, that Parliament is not responding to people, and that an entrenched elite is really ruling the country.
Gene.
Stacy, first of all, why has Samuel Adams been sort of forgotten? And I guess he was a cousin of John Adams, is that right? I also wonder how the two of them got along, since neither of them seemed to get along with anybody.
John doesn't get along with anybody. That's actually true. They're second cousins. Samuel's a little bit older. He's 13 years older and recruits John, in fact, as he recruits many people to the cause. Another one of his contributions is that he runs a sort of recruiting office for the revolution. Samuel is the one who actually pulls John in. From the earliest days, they work very closely. They really work hand in glove together. And they agree from the earliest days that the Crown officials then in Boston are a great threat to American liberty. How he gets written out of the picture, it's in part his own fault. He never collects his papers. He doesn't leave any kind of memoir. John, who preens for posterity and believes that everyone should write about himself, counsels Samuel to do so, and Samuel ignores that advice. So he never collects his massive amount of paper, which John says would explain the American Revolution so beautifully. And he's a very modest man. I also should add that this is the no fingerprints school of revolution. He's meaning to responsibility should be diffused, names should be disguised. You know, there's a tremendous scene in John Adams's writings in which he talks about Samuel Adams feeding his papers to the fire so that none of their Confederates will be compromised. I mean, you are fomenting revolution. You do want to cover the trail.
Yeah, you know, Trump used to eat the papers. Jonathan Capehart.
Stacey, it is great to see you. It's Jonathan Capehart. And I'm glad you talked about Samuel Adams not keeping his papers, because it ties in directly to the question I was going to ask you. If you've never read any of Stacey's books, read Cleopatra, because what made that book so brilliant is that you used what is like the one known phrase or sentence tied to Cleopatra and turned it into a huge book, biography of this mysterious and spectacular woman. And so I was going to ask you, which was easier to write, Cleopatra, given you only had a phrase or sentence attributed to her, but were able to construct her life, or Samuel Adams, but now you're saying he had no papers, he had nothing. How did you go about writing this book?
Well, fortunately for us, that was only one fire, at least that we know of. So a great deal still survives. But it's a very interesting parallel between the two because you're writing from their enemies in large part. Cleopatra's story is we know from Roman men writing about a Greek woman to whom they were all inimical. But in this case, we have a huge amount on Samuel Adams from the Crown officers, the customs officials, the governor, the lieutenant governor in Boston, who are desperately trying to rein in this obstreperous individual who just keeps running circles around them, whom they refer to as the Machiavelli of chaos, the chief incendiary, the grand incendiary, who keeps kind of pulling legislation fully written already from his pocket, and who just seems to always be 2 steps ahead of them. And those descriptions are beautifully preserved in the British Archive. So we have a huge cache there, and we also do have quite a bit of Adams's correspondence that was saved from those fires.
All right. The book is entitled The Revolutionary Samuel Adams. Pulitzer Prize winning historian Stacy Schiff, thank you very much for being on this morning. We really appreciate it.